As we round out the year, it's time to think about profitability, understand what's happened over the course of the year, and give some insights into what we think it means for 2026. Peter Kujawa joins me today on the Business of Tech Lounge. It's Wednesday, December 17th, 2025, and I'm Dave Sobel. Welcome to the Business of Tech Lounge, the live version of the Business of Tech podcast. I want to thank ABC Solutions, a Business of Tech Plus supporting vendor. ABC Solutions specializes exclusively in accounting, supporting managed service providers and IT firms. Check them out at abcsolvesit.com. And our live stream support is provided by Rhythms, delivering 5G connectivity solutions for MSPs. Reliable internet access for everyone. Visit rythmz.com for more information. My guest today is the man with the answers, Peter Kujawa of Service Leadership. Peter is a frequent flyer on the show, and I'm excited to have him back. Peter, welcome back to the Business of Tech Lounge.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me on. Always great to join you.
You know, you and I always enjoy these conversations because we really get to get into some of the best information in the market space, because you really do have all the best stuff. And I want to sort of set the scene a little bit. When I dug into the most recent reports that you've put out, my kind of first takeaway is I didn't think the market was exactly what we thought it was. You noted this year, 2024, as the fifth consecutive year of strong profitability, the longest run in industry history. Yep. But I noted that revenue growth did cool versus that 2021 through 2023 period, and profits have held. So if someone only skimmed the headlines, they might think MSPs are under pressure. Are they?
Well, it's a complicated question and answer. We'll try to distill it down. So there's a couple of different data points that you're pulling together there that both are really relevant. So the first one is, it's the fifth straight, and it'll be the sixth year this year, we think, based on all of the data trends through Q3, a year of record profitability. So it really goes back to 2020, which is still amazing to me to think of. We have a massive global pandemic, and it sets off this great run for the industry. But I don't think it was just the pandemic. I think the industry had matured. SMBs had come to really accept the MSP model. There were all sorts of things that converged around that time. But yeah, we saw record profitability. So the best in class, the last 5.5, 6 years have made more money than they ever did before. The median has made more money, and the bottom quartile has lost less money than they ever did before. So all three quartiles have done really well over the last 6 years. To answer your question, though, on revenue growth, you're correct. So our data shows that organic revenue growth really peaked in about late 2022, early 2023, somewhere thereabouts. And it peaked at about 25% on a 4-quarter over 4-quarter basis. Now, organic revenue growth for us counts new users being added to your existing accounts. So you're seeing organic growth that way as your accounts are growing, your user counts are growing, price increases, and then, of course, new logos. So new logo growth during the early couple of years of COVID was really high as companies moved to work from home and had security issues that they hadn't had before. So we certainly saw that too. But a lot of that revenue growth, so it came up really fast and then it came down about equally fast and bottomed out at about 8.6% about a year ago, maybe 5 quarters ago. And since that time, it's come back up. Last quarter, our most recent 4 quarters was at 10.6% organic growth, which is right in a healthy range. 10 to 14% is a normal healthy range for the industry. So, but what's interesting is as revenue growth went up, profitability actually retreated a little bit. And as revenue growth has gone back to historical norms, profitability has actually improved. And so the last 4 or 5 quarters have actually been better quarters for profitability than when we were at the height of the revenue growth. And the reason for that is that a lot of that revenue growth was fueled by wage inflation. And wage inflation was running really, really hot back in 21, 22. And MSPs, no matter, they couldn't increase prices fast enough to keep up with it. So yeah, revenue growth was really exciting and fun to look at, but wage inflation was taking a bigger bite out of service gross margin and therefore EBITDA. And so service gross margin has improved the last several quarters, and EBITDA has as well. So the answer is yes, revenue growth feels tougher. Um, and it certainly is. That 10.6 is an average. We have about 58% of partners that are growing slower than that. And we have a chunk of partners, about 18.5% of which who are growing faster than 20%. So they're bringing up that average a little bit. So revenue growth feels a lot slower for the industry, and certainly for the 58% of MSPs growing slower than that. But from a profitability standpoint, overall industry health standpoint, we're in a really good time.
Okay, so I'm going to get to the labor stuff in a second, but I want to
Is
actually
that a
spend a
short
little
enough
bit more.
answer for you, Dave?
You do, you always do. It's you, but I want to talk a little bit about the middle piece about around profitability, because again, I was sort of looking, when we look at the best in class data, that's running 2.5 times the EBITDA of their median peers, right? So I noted that, and when I was digging in, and I think I got all the numbers right here, the 2024 MSP EBITDA numbers, top quartile around 20%, the median 12%, and the bottom quartile around 3%. I kind of want to talk a little bit about that median bit.
Yeah.
That would we describe the median MSP as healthy or just surviving? Let's talk a little bit about that piece.
Well, I think in general, I would say they're healthy, but the point
Okay.
of the reason we have the chart in the annual report showing the difference between the best in class and the median is it's easy if you're bottom quartile to know that you need to kick it in. You need to make some hard choices and fix some things, right? I know it because I'm in the bottom 25%. But there's something about being in the median that in my experience leads a lot of partners into an attitude of complacency, and that they're doing pretty well. And is the juice really worth the squeeze to put in the extra effort to get to the best in class? And the data says it absolutely is, because the average best in class partner is making on average 2.5 times what the average median partner is making for profitability for roughly the same business, and across all size ranges we see that as well. So yeah, I mean, if you can forget going from the bottom quartile to the best in class, of course you're going to see a huge quantum leap in profitability. If you just go though from the bottom quartile to the median, or the median to the best in class, life gets way better for you. You're going to see a huge improvement. So the median, I would say, is the median growth is median profitability has actually grown over the past few years. It was down around 9.5 or 10% average, and last couple of quarters we've been in the 12% range. So the median is healthy, I would say, but
Okay.
you're working just as hard to be a median as you are to be best in class. You might as well make some decisions and be best in class.
Well, certainly. I mean, would definitely argue that those on an individual basis are very much in control of the choices they make. But I also want to understand a little bit of the market pressure. Like it's been my interpretation of the data, and tell me where I'm wrong here, that best in class has maintained its percentage for pretty much a 15-20 year period. But I could make a pretty solid argument that the industry certainly has matured, and a lot of these best practices, defined models, understanding of the ways that you should engage have become significantly more defined, at least over the last 10 years.
For sure. Yes,
I
for
will say
sure.
I've been doing this 20, but like, let's say for a while, like for the last 10 years, but we're not seeing the proportion that are achieving best in class really start expanding. What does that say about the industry in terms of the way the fall, the various tiers and cohorts are falling out?
Yeah, if your point is that best in class average profitability has been around 24 or 25% for many, many years now, um, that's a fair point. It would be great to see that go up to 30, 35%. But it's a service business after all. We're not a software business with software as a service margins. It is a service business. It's a people-based business. And one thing we have seen in the data is you're correct that the model has become much better known. And frankly, the tools have become better. The opportunity to build efficiency gains in your business has become better. So all of those things have been positive contributors to profitability. But since 2012, we have not seen an improvement in what we refer to as our W2 ratio, or our service multiple of wages, which is the relationship between how much your service team costs and how much service revenue you're billing. So historically, we've argued at Service Leadership that that should be at least at a 2.5. So if you have $1 million of total cost in your service operation, you should be billing at least 2.5 million of service revenue across project services, managed services, and any break fix that you might be doing on a billable ticket basis. Uh, and that's if you have your service team aligned with our chart of accounts, meaning it's not just your techs, but you have your service manager in there, you have your VCIOs in there, anybody who's doing service for customers after they've signed up as a customer. Um, so 2.5, we've long argued, is where you should be. Well, best in class has been around 2.7, 2.8 for a while now. But interestingly, since 2012, we have not seen any improvement in that ratio. And that was surprising to us because we just assumed as tools were getting better, the model was better known, etc., that we would see a steady improvement in that ratio. But when we dove into the data, what the data tells us is that while there's been price increases and while there has been efficiency gains on how many techs you need to support your customers, um, those things have been outpaced by wage inflation. So since 2012, the cost of those techs has gone up proportionally more than our industry has been able to raise prices and gain efficiency. It's part of the reason. And so I think that speaks to the issue you're talking about, Dave, that even though the model's better known now, and even though we are seeing healthy growth and industry adoption amongst certainly SMBs out there, at the same time, the cost of technical talent for MSPs has gone up at a rate that's about twice that of traditional inflation. So that's I think held down profits on a top end as much as anything.
Okay, well, there's two things that I'm curious about that, because the first actually is what I want to see is I want to see more people achieving the 20% is actually what I'm hoping to see. I'd like to see that
Well,
cohort
by
expand.
definition, the top quartile will always be the top
So that's
25%. But
totally fair, but in a way, but then that leads to pushing the number higher, right? So that the interesting piece there is you talk a lot in that answer legitimately about the cost of human labor. I can
mhm.
make a pretty strong argument that that portion is about to change very dramatically. In theory, if the promise of automation delivers on the level that we're talking about it over the next 12, 18, or 24 months, we may actually see a disruption of that W2 ratio potentially. If AI automation can deliver the kind of promises that are being made, we may have to come back and rediscuss that. Have you been thinking about the way we're going to discuss and measure that number going forward with the promise of automated tier one delivery?
Well, I wouldn't say I've been thinking about it every waking moment, uh, but a whole lot of them have been thinking about it. Yeah. So first of all, your premise I totally agree with. As we look at as I go broader outside of service leadership and IT Nation, and just look at what we're working on within ConnectWise with the ASIO platform and some of the automation that we'll be rolling out and building into that platform as it gets more robust over the next 6 to 12 months. That's definitely the premise, right? It's not that the argument will not be that MSPs will be doing wholesale layoffs. It'll be, as you're growing your business, you just won't need to add people at the same pace as you've added them, and you won't need to backfill some positions as you're turning some of those over. And if you do that over a period of time while you're gaining a lot of efficiency in your operation, you'll wake up one day and you'll be much, much more efficient on your service delivery. So, for example, today, best in class, I think the ratio of endpoints per engineer in our data, best in class companies are at about 380, and the average is somewhere around 150, 160. I think last time I looked. Well, if you were able to take that 380 best in class up to even 600, it doesn't have to be like 5,000 or anything. If you just took it from 380 up to 600, 650, the impact on your service gross margin and on your profitability would be remarkable. So yeah, I think so. To answer your question more specifically, are we looking at it? Yeah, we think it'll affect an MSP in some obvious places. For example, one obvious one is the one I just named. How many endpoints per engineer do you have? How many end users per engineer do you have in your tech team? So those are some of the obvious places, but it should show up even in finance and in your G&A cost structure, your sales and marketing spend, if you're using automation tools there. And so we're looking at a weighted metric that we're still working on that'll factor in a bunch of different KPIs. I don't want to announce them yet until we
Okay.
have it finalized, but we think we'll be ready to go with this in Q1 and be able to start really tracking a more holistic look at automation throughout the MSP, not just looking at the service desk, but certainly that'll wade into it.
Now, we can talk a little bit about some of the industrialization of people right now, because when I dug into the numbers here, I was noting the infrastructure MSP revenue per employee was up 14%, and adjusted EBITDA per employee up 12% in the same period. Like, what we can speak to, like what's already happening in the field. Like, do you have a sense of where that efficiency is coming from?
Well, yeah, I think if, it depends on the MSPs and the rooms that I'm in, but
Okay.
uh, every quarter, because of peer groups, the Evolve groups, we go into each of those groups and we spend time. I was just over 2 weeks ago in Europe in our Europe community talking to partners. My sense of it right now is you really have three types of partners that are out there. The first type is all in. They're really focused on how do we build automation into our business. Some of them are trying to figure out how to monetize it for their customer base, but they're certainly embracing the opportunity that's there for their business. So they're starting to look at ways they can automate and build workflows into their help desk, into their level one tickets. And after all, level one tickets are about 70% of the tickets. So if you can figure out ways to automate and even not eliminate fully by through complete automation, but if you can streamline the amount of time it takes you to resolve a level one ticket, you can get huge efficiency gains pretty quickly. And we're seeing a cadre of partners out there that are already starting to do that. And so there's definitely partners, and we're seeing them. We had 3 partners on stage at IT Nation talking about gains that they're getting today. And some of these gains are already efficiency gains of 30, 40%. So they're material gains already happening. The second cadre of partners, I would say, and it's probably the largest group of partners, is intellectually curious about it. They're watching it and they're intending to get going in it, but they're just not sure how to really get started in it. And so they're really listening and watching and learning. And I think those partners will start to really adopt some of these technologies more aggressively starting probably next year as some of them become a little bit more mainstream and a little bit more known. And then there's a third cadre of partners out there that I think is part of what's fueling the M&A wave that we are continuing to see. And those are partners who are saying, you know what, I've been through a couple of curve jumps in my business over the years, and it was a lot of fun. It was great. I enjoyed it, but I'm now at an age and where I think I'll leave this curve jump for the next guy, and I'm going to sell my business. And so we're seeing some partners that are looking at this as an inflection point and saying, I'm just not that interested in making that one more major push over the next 3 to 5 years to come out on the other side of this thing. And so there's definitely some of those going on as well. So I think right now we're not seeing one thing in the industry. There's definitely some different mentalities that are out there.
May we live in interesting times. I'm with you that there's an interesting inflection point, and I think age of the owner is something to definitely be thinking about, because I think you're right. I think we're at that inflection point. You led me right to my next set of questions, because valuations did increase 22% from 2023 to 2024 for best in class firms. You noted in the notes that the valuation lift was driven by profit growth, not growth hype. So I really wanted to get a sense, like, so what are buyers really paying for right now? Like, what are they valuing, and what's driving that higher?
Well, in our valuation model, we look at revenue mix, we look at EBITDA percentage, and we look at the size of EBITDA output. So, are you a best in class MSP who has, let's say, 60% managed service revenue, and you're generating 20% as best in class, but you're small, so that 20% is only 300,000. Well, if all else is equal, but you're generating 2 million, your multiple is going to be much higher on that because you're going to be a lot more appealing to some of the mid-size and larger PE buyers that are out there. So there's different factors that influence it. And that's just in our model. Our model is highly approximate. In real world, there's going to be a bunch of additional things that are going to come in on any valuation. Most notably, revenue growth. We've seen in the last couple of years a significant emphasis on revenue growth as a determinative impact on multiples. So if you have let's say I have two MSPs side by side, they're both 10 million a year of revenue. They're both generating 20% EBITDA, putting them in both in best in class. But one of them's growing 15% and one of them's growing 5%. Well, the 15% is going to be worth a whole lot more because the buyer is going to know that they have a sales engine in place, that it's not just owner sales that will go away when the owner leaves. There's other things that certainly play in: quality of leadership team, type of contracts that you have, customer concentration risk. So real world, there's a lot of additional things that come into valuations. In general, my observation has been, if you run a high OML MSP, meaning you're doing the right things right, running your business, you're generating best in class profitability or close to it, but you're doing other things that just make your business run better, those things will probably factor in really favorably when you go to sell as well. So life will be better in the meantime until you sell, whenever that might be. But your valuation will be higher as well.
Peter, I want to give you the opportunity to put on your analyst hat for a second, because what I'm starting to notice about valuation is I really do feel like we've got established two camps. You know, we've got the high value, and we've got a you know, the I will go with average value, because I don't think any of these businesses are low value. I just think it's sort of an average value. And I'm starting to get a sense that this may be the way things are in this space. Do you think we're settling into a permanent two-tier MSP market for valuations?
Um, well, I think we probably have been there for a while. I would
Okay.
actually argue that there's really three tiers. You have the really high quality MSPs, and there's other factors that come in for those as well. For example, do you have a specific vertical focus in a regulated vertical? Well, if you do, there's probably a buyer out there who also does, who is going to pay a lot more for your business than the next business over, because there's a strategic impact for them to buy your business. So there's certainly on the high end, there's certainly been a bifurcation with the average MSP folks that are out there, and but there's also still a market for distressed assets, which would be the third market. So there's definitely MSPs out there that operate with a strategy of, I'm going to do acquisitions of those bottom quartile folks. I will pay them 25, 30, 35 cents on the dollar to buy their MSP, but I will give them something. And as a walkway, maybe we throw an earn out in there to sweeten it a little bit. But I'm going to go in there and buy this distressed asset, and I'm going to wave a magic wand over it with all my knowledge of the industry and impute greatness on it. And it will all of a sudden be worth a whole lot more if I do that. I'm not a huge fan of that strategy personally, but that's a strategy that's out there as well. So I think that's been that way for a while, Dave, and I don't think it's any different today.
Okay, fair. Then I can definitely can check off the, like, yes, that is settled. It has already settled into this, and thank you for calling out that third class. Now, you mentioned compensation, and we talked about this when we reviewed the data last year. In this year's data, we'll note that the best-in-class firms pay around 7% less than the median and 13% less than the bottom. You and I talked about this, that they're much more smart about the way that they're investing here. But I noticed that the new sort of piece in this was that the wage inflation peaked in 2022, and that 2025 raises planned were lower than the 2024 actuals. Is there just a
Yep.
subtle establishment of maturity to this? Is there something new in the data in terms of compensation? Is there something to highlight, particularly around 2025?
No, I don't think there's really anything new. There's two different things at work that you're talking about. So the first one, it's true when we compare best in class, median, and bottom quartile. On average, the best in class pays about $10,000 a year less than the bottom quartile for their managed service roles. The important nuance of that, though, is that that's by category. So, what does that mean? Well, let's say I have two MSPs. They each have 10 employees in their managed service operation and their help desk and support team. Well, let's say MSPA has one or two level ones, five level twos, and four level threes. And MSP2 has five or six level ones, three level twos, and two level threes, let's say. Okay, so it's the pyramid. Do I have a pyramid that's built on a base that's wider on the bottom of level ones? Or is it the opposite? It's built on a pyramid that has more level twos and threes. The bottom quartile folks have more level twos and threes. The best in class have more level ones. So if I would add up the total annual earnings for those 10 people in each of those two MSPs and I'd divide it by 10, what I would find would be the average compensation would be much higher for the bottom quartile than for the best in class. And that would be because of me having more level twos and threes in the operation. So it's not that they're necessarily paying less per person, but they are overall as a category paying less. Um, Wage inflation, though, your other point, wage inflation has been on a really nice downward trend since 2022. That was the high watermark for the industry. And our predictions for next year is that trend is going to continue and wage inflation will continue to revert back to historical norms.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, the other piece of this is that it's not just salaries that was interesting. There's some incentive data to talk to as
Yep.
well, particularly when we look at the variable pay, for those different pieces. Staff, 9% for best in class versus 5% in the bottom quartile. And managers actually a little bit even broader, that 16% versus the 7%. Talk to me a little bit more about how incentive structure actually matters more than base pay when we're looking at this whole piece.
Yeah, the best in class on average pays 2 to 3x the incentive pay as a percentage of total annual earnings than the bottom quartile and the median do. And it's not, everybody says, well, okay, so they do that for their managers, right? No, it's not just for the managers. We see it in staff positions as well. They're just much better at building in some performance into their overall incentives. So, what they do is what they pay that on is really important. You don't want to pay staff members on things that they view as outside of their control. So, rookie move would be, hey, staff, we're going to we're going to pay you this bonus if we grow revenue as an MSP by X amount next year. Well, if I'm a help desk level one, how do I tie what I do to revenue growth directly, right? I mean, indirectly, yes, I can look at my role as customer service and driving referrals and all these things. But if if I'm a level one, I should be tied into things that are more directly within my control. On the other hand, if I'm an executive at the MSP, I should be tied into EBITDA to budget. It should be a very specific target that the executive team is aligned on that says, here's our goal for the year for EBITDA. And if we overperform, we'll overpay it. And if we underperform, there will be a minimal or no bonuses paid. So So it depends on the level of position and what's within your control. But regardless, there's some best practices that service leadership teaches for incentive compensation. And we definitely see the best in class doing those much more.
Gotcha. Now I'm going to give you the opportunity to be a little quick prescriptive. Like, what is one incentive metric that you think MSPs should spend a little bit of time and rethink to make sure they've got correct? I know there's a lot, but let's give people something actionable. What's the one to really focus on first?
Well, the one I probably get asked about the most is technical team. So what should I do? What's the one thing I should pay my techs on? And my answer is don't pay them on one thing. Pay them on three things and do a balanced scorecard approach so that they don't zero in on one thing and sacrifice everything else that they do to hit that one metric. So, for example, if you pay your techs just based on a number of tickets resolved, expect your techs to not tackle the tough tickets. They will go after just whatever they can close quickly so they can maximize their bonus payout. So you want to look at a balanced approach. Our teachings on it would show things like CSAT, mattering. You might tie your support team into managed service renewal rates. They have a very direct impact on that, much more so than your salesperson probably does. So there are definitely things that you can tie them into, but whether it's at a team level or an individual level, the closer you can get it to what they can control within their day-to-day activities, the more effective it will be to motivate their behavior.
Gotcha. Now I want to talk a little bit of industry stuff because you did update, at least from my perspective, because I'm updating my own internal quoting of these data. 81% of technology solution providers under $10 million in revenue, and 67% are under $5 million. But there's a notable point in there that both have been shrinking since 2014. I want to get a little bit of your
Yeah.
take on the change here. Is the argument that you think scale is becoming mandatory, or is it just rewarded? What's your take on this differentiation?
Well, around 2014, the reason we picked that year, that's around when private equities showed up.
Okay.
And so the private equity roll up model started in earnest around 2014, 2015, and started really driving the things that we've seen going massively faster and faster over the past 5 years. So my take on it would be that private equity money and the consolidation that we've seen there has built international MSPs, a whole bunch of truly national in scope MSPs, but that the majority of the industry is still a sub 5 to 7 million a year revenue industry. Now, if we would have had this discussion, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I would have said most of the industry is 2 to 3 million of revenue, right? And there's definitely still a lot of smaller partners out there, but we've definitely seen the industry continue to shift upwards in size as more and more partners, even those who haven't been doing any acquisitions, have just continued to grow their businesses. There was a time I remember when the MSP I was running hit 10 million of revenue, and there were hardly any MSPs out there doing 10 million of revenue. Well, today there's a whole bunch of MSPs doing 10 million of revenue. It's not that unusual to find, but so we're seeing the maturing of the industry for sure. At the same time, the other point is that we're seeing a lot of new entrants into the industry over the past several years. It's a knowledge-based industry, so you can hang a shingle and start an MSP with a knowledge and some entrepreneurial spirit. You don't need a lot of capital to do it. And so we're continuing to see new MSPs starting up as well.
Gotcha. And I'm with you. That's an exciting time, and there's some new technologies that may do it. I want a couple of last things to get a little bit of the broader sense as we wrap our time in this conversation. I could do this all day, but I want to be respectful of both your and the audience's time. I kind of want to get a little bit of a sense, like two quick questions. The first one I want to get is your sense is, what do you think owners and operators of MSPs should stop blaming the market for? You look at all the data. What's the one thing that you think that they should not be blaming the market for?
That's a great question. I hear the market blame for a whole lot of things all the time. Look, I think the general answer I would give you is a little evasive, but the general answer I would give you is that I would give every MSP, and I do give every MSP, is that you have the ability, whatever size you are and wherever you're located, to be best in class. Our data tells us that whether you're 2 million in revenue or 10 million or 50 million in revenue, somewhere between 22 and 26% of you are best in class, and somewhere between 22 and 30% of you are bottom quartile. There's a little bit of variance from size to size, but generally speaking, every size can be really successful. Every size can also grow. When we looked at our breakdown on growth data to look at what's skewing that 10.6% up and down, the first thing we looked at was size correlation, because a lot of theories were out there that if you're really big, you have a big sales engine, so your growth rate's going to be a lot faster. And the opposite, that if you're really growing that fast, you must be small, otherwise you wouldn't be able to grow that fast. And we found that neither was true. Across all size ranges, there were different levels of growth. So the overall message I would have is, don't look at the market. Don't blame where you're located. Don't blame anything other than how you're running the business. And benchmark, learn where you're making mistakes, and also learn where you're doing things well. We always talk about the negative things that you need to fix, but every MSP is probably doing some things really well that they should keep doing well and not change because they went and heard a speaker somewhere. So you really need to know what those things are and understand what the data is empirically telling you, and make decisions starting today to fix the things that need to be fixed. That's the biggest difference, Dave. When I see partners who are really successful and those between the median and the bottom quartile, most often it's not that the ones who are really successful are smarter or better at technology or anything. It's that they've just gotten sick of being mediocre, and they have made a decision that we're going to really embrace the opportunity that this thing has, which is going to mean some tough decisions and making some changes. And maybe I need to say goodbye to some unprofitable customers and all of those kinds of things. But if they do and they go through it, they come out of it much better off for it. So that's the biggest advice I would give.
My friend Carl Polachek always says you are an economy of one, and to always remind yourself of that every single day, and you can make decisions. Now, my last question, because I want to get just your take on this, is the data telling us that the MSP market is maturing or that the market is fragmenting? Which camp do you think this is?
I think it's maturing. I think the fragmented part is probably coming. I think the onset of automation and AI is going to fragment the market over the next 3 to 4 years. Maybe a little faster than that, maybe not. But I do think that the MSPs that will be making significant investments in time and treasure over the next couple of years to automate their businesses and to take advantage of the opportunity that's here, they're going to see the benefit of that over the next 3 4 years, and you're going to start to see a split between those who have automated and those and when I say automated, I don't mean getting rid of all your people. This is still going to be a people to people business, but if you can do what you're doing today but do it with 50% proportionate talent in your managed service operation, for example, you're going to be able to do some things competitively that others are not. So I think that's coming. I don't think it's here yet.
Gotcha. Well, Peter, we will keep these conversations going, and you and I can find out together when exactly that happens. If people are interested in continuing the conversation, reaching out, what are the best ways for them to get in touch?
Go to connectwise.com and you will find the community section on the top tab and top of the page. Click on community. It'll take you into information on service leadership and our benchmarking and our reports, how to get copies of those, and how to subscribe to our benchmarking, and how to sign up. There's information in there on IT Nation Evolve and IT Nation Connect, our events. So
well, Peter,
all of it.
You are one of my favorite guests to have on the show. Thank you so much for spending some time with me, and I look forward to having some data conversations with you in 2026.
Looking forward to it, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining me. I also want to preview an interview that's dropping this weekend with Matthew Nikorvesh. He's the CEO of Solaris Technologies. We talked about how his MSP is leveraging automation and AI to enhance the service delivery for his customers, particularly in the nonprofit sector. He talked about the importance of data readiness and the strategic bundling of services to provide that worry-free IT. Here's a preview of that interview. Now, one of the things that I always love talking about on the show is automation, right? But for many MSPs, automation really is still a buzzword rather than an actual lived reality. When you look at your stack, like from RMM to PSA to Nerdio and your security tooling, where has automation actually reduced tickets, labors, or cycle time? And where is it not really delivering on the promised savings?
So we actually believe that automation is fantastic. It's here and we're using it a ton. We have automation built out through Nerdio for one, but our other big automation platform is Pia. We have things automated from user onboardings to user offboardings. We have AI-based dispatch where 35% of our incoming tickets are dispatched automatically based on AI. It's looking at the ticket, it's looking at the content, it's looking at the tone of the email, and it's figuring out who the best engineer is to take that ticket. And then it figures out who has the first availability and automatically assigns it and communicates with the client. So we've seen huge savings with AI and automation just from that.
Have you got areas of it that where it quite hasn't delivered? Like you've said, like we've experimented and it's not working as well as we'd hoped?
So I think it's a learning process. So it's not perfect the first time you launch it. So it learns and you learn on how to, tweak that automation to be better. Initially, when we started out, I would say less than 10% of our tickets were being automatically dispatched. Now we've gotten it trained up to the point where we can have 35% automatically dispatched and put out. In addition, I mentioned user onboardings and offboardings. We have those forms created for automation where in the past, a company would email us, we have John Smith starting on Monday. And then there would probably be 5 to 10 emails asking all the other questions they forgot to, give us answers on. Now it's one form. They're forced to answer the questions and it's fully automated on the back end. So we'll go ahead and create the Microsoft 365 account. It will purchase a license if necessary. It will add them to the proper security groups, etc. So we've got it pretty dialed in.
He really did talk about all the ways that his organization makes this real and makes it executable for MSPs. I really encourage you to check it out. Business of Tech Plus subscribers get interviews early in the dynamic ad-free feed. It's a benefit of supporting the show. Visit businessof.tech/plus to sign up and get early access. That interview will be released for everyone on the weekend. I want to thank ABC Solutions, a Business of Tech Plus supporting vendor. ABC Solutions specializes exclusively in accounting, supporting managed service providers and IT firms. Check them out at abcsolvesit.com. Live stream support is provided by Rhythms, delivering 5G connectivity solutions for MSPs. Reliable internet access for everyone. Visit rythmz.com for more information. And vendors, you too can get your name mentioned on the live show. It's part of our vendor support level for the Business of Tech Plus. If you as a listener would like to support the show and get even more from the Business of Tech, check out our membership options at businessof.tech/plus. There's a free tier with access to daily stories and transcripts, insider access for bonus analysis and early access to interviews, and the leadership tier with exclusive vendor briefings, data reports, and behind-the-scenes insight into the channel. Every membership directly supports independent reporting and helps me continue to bringing you research-driven coverage of the IT services industry. Again, that's businessof.tech/plus. If you have a question or are listening to the recording, send it in at question@mspradio.com, or if you're watching on YouTube, put it in the comments below. Thanks for joining me for the Business of Tech Lounge, and I will see you next time.
Part of the MSP Radio Network.